Lesson number 33. We are learning JavaScript. This is lesson number 33 and the third lesson on the addition script, which we have been working on. And in this series, we are trying to recreate this application, which is available on this website here. And all it is simply addition practice for young children. It has two numbers, an addition symbol, and an input field. You type in an answer and it will tell you if the answer is right or wrong. If you type in a wrong answer, it will represent whether the answer is right or wrong. So this is what we have created so far, just one component of it, and we will recreate this whole application as it is. So I will close this and I will close this. I will change the size of the browser, and this is the script that we created last time. This is the document that we created last time. This is the exact copy of it for today's lesson. So I will right mouse click and I will open it with my Sublime text editor, and this is the piece of code that we have written so far. In the last video, we learned how to check a user's response in terms of whether the answer typed in by the user is correct or not. So if you type in an answer here, it will tell you, it will say good job as a response, as an alert. And if you type in a wrong answer, it will tell you, it will say not cool. So we are getting some response from the script, and this is the piece of code that we created last time, which offers a lot to learn, and we can take this as an opportunity to understand what are objects, what are anonymous functions, and what are handlers or handler functions. An anonymous function is simply a function that does not have a name, and you can see that this function in this case does not have a name, so it's known as anonymous function. This, however, is a handler. In one of the last lessons, we created this element, this input field, which is here, this blank input field, which is here, and this field is being saved as a variable called result. And in this piece of code, we are adding an event listener to this input field, and this is the event. In the last video, I said this little e represents an object. This e is very frequently also called a handler, which represents an object that holds various properties of whatever key is pressed in this case. The e or handler is very similar to a variable, which holds any key that has been pressed by the user as an object and all its properties. So e is very similar to any other variable that we have created, and it holds the properties of the key press object dynamically. So the question is, what is an object and what are its properties? And this is one of the concepts that we will learn today. The topic is super important for the users to understand if they want to learn JavaScript. In very simple words, an object in JavaScript holds some data. Okay, so it's a small database, so to speak. An object in JavaScript is like a very real object in life, for example, a car or a fruit or a human being, and all objects have some properties. For example, a fruit has a name, color, and size, etc., and we can save those properties in an object. So in very simple terms, an object is a database that holds some properties about something. So let's create an object called fruit from the real life, and in JavaScript we create an object with the help of these two curly braces, and every object can have a name, for example. So fruit also has a name, so I will say name and a colon, and within quotation marks I will say apple. Okay, so name of the fruit is apple. What I have literally done, I have created a property, what is called a property in JavaScript, property of the object, and a property is composed of what is known as a key and a value. So this is a pair of a key and a value, and I will type in a comma and I will say color, and again colon and quotation marks and red. So I have created an object that has two properties in it. This is the first property and this is the second property, and each property is composed of a key and a value pair. Okay, now although an object has been created, but there is no way so far to access its properties. So what I have to do, I have to say let name of the object and is equal to sign. So we literally have created an object called fruit, and fruit has two properties which are saved within the body of the object. So if I say console.log and I say fruit, if I save it, refresh it, press F12, and you can see that I have created an object. Let me maximize it. So there is an object that has two properties, and each property is composed of a key and a value, and of course this is an object. So this is what an object is. This is the object that we created called fruit, and has some properties which we can access, and in this particular case we console logged the properties of this object. And in last video I also said that this was an object, and we are also console logging it, which will only work. We should be able to see this object when a key is pressed. So if I maximize it and I press F12 to see the console, this object is already logged, console logged. And if I press enter, for example, in this field, ignore this for a moment, and we can see that there is another object. If I click on this arrow, you can see that this object also has some properties, a key and a value property, a key and a value, and another property, a key and a value. And this is the property that we are currently using in our JavaScript to achieve whatever we want to achieve. Okay, so char code property of this object. So let me say one more thing here. I will use type of property, and I will say fruit one more time, and I will also say type of E here, and I will say E one more time. So now we should be able to see the type of the object, type of the entity, and the properties. Okay, so if I save it and maximize it and refresh it, we can see that there is an object indeed, object here. This is the type of the element, this is the type of the entity. And if I press enter here, ignore this one more time, you can see that this is also an object. So this one and this one, both are objects. The only difference is that we created this object here, and this object was created with the help of this handler function as a result of event listener within this input field. So let me explain it one more time what is happening in this piece of code here. We are telling the browser that whenever user presses a key within this input field, okay, the event listener is attached to this variable, which is this input field here, this input field on the browser. Whenever a user presses a key within this input field, call an anonymous function. And again, the term anonymous function is used for the functions that do not have any name. The function E is also an event handling function, sometimes called a handler or handler function in short. A handler function is a function that runs when an event fires. Okay, events like a mouse click or a mouse over, or in this particular case, press of a key. And what it does when the event fire, it creates an object and assigns that object to this handler, which means that the object has been made available for whatever you need to do with it. Once an object has been created and has been assigned to this handler, we can not only see its properties, but we can also use it for our purpose as we are using it in our case.